Now, if you ask me now, should we have gone to Iraq? Absolutely not. We had no reason to be there. The 9/11 narrative, I think over the course of years, I lived in D.C. for 3 years and worked at the Pentagon and worked right in the G1 area where the plane hit, supposedly. I do have one very good friend that was there the day the whatever hit the Pentagon, and he claims it was a plane. I think just over the course of probably the last 10 years maybe, I've just seen and read, and by working at the Pentagon and saw where the plane hit, or whatever hit it, the angle of the hole in the building, and then you start to hear things about what happened with the Twin Towers and fuel burning steel and the conspiracy theory about the explosives. And as you hear about this stuff, some people, if you talk to them about it, they think you're nuts. But I have a ton of questions that I would love to sit down with experts. You know, like building 7?
No reason to fall, no plane hit it.
And the way all three of these buildings fell straight down is how controlled detonations happen.
Yeah.
I mean, there are just so many questions that I have that I'm very skeptical about the story that we've been given.
Yeah, and I was just curious of that because I was wondering like what it's like to lead with those questions in your head and still going out and doing your job.
This is Sparta!
Welcome back to Spartan Leadership. I'm your host, Josh Kosnick, and this is your podcast for leadership, inspiration, and impact. Today will be no different. Got a friend in the studio. We're going to have a fireside chat. So let me give a brief intro and we'll be off and running. I'm honored to sit down with Colonel Michael T. Murphy. We're going to call him Mike from now on. But Wisconsin native and distinguished U.S. Army leader whose career has spanned nearly 4 decades of service. Colonel Murphy began his military journey in 1987. You know, I was 7 years old then, Mike.
I feel old.
That was with the Wisconsin Army National Guard and went on to serve in a wide range of leadership roles. From infantry commander to operations officer and battalion commander, his service includes over 350 missions in Iraq, where he brought every soldier home. And I emphasize that for a reason. He's earned the Bronze Star Medal, Combat Infantry's Badge, and Infantryman's Badge. Did I say that right?
Yes.
All right. It's a big word.
It is. We call it a CIB.
CIB, there we go. And numerous laundry list of accommodations, and now continues to serve as a mentor and advocate for soldiers and leaders navigating life beyond the uniform. Today, we're going to talk through what it means to lead under fire, how to care for those you command, and the lessons Colonel Murphy carries from both the battlefield and the home front. Welcome to the show.
Thanks, Josh. I appreciate it. It's an honor to be here.
Yeah, it's an honor to have you in this chair. So now in retired life, let's take it back to the beginning.
Okay.
All right. So let's think through, so you're young when you got into the military. You spent your life leading in soldiers and beyond. But what first drew you to military service way back when?
That's an interesting story. So I graduated from the University of Wisconsin-Eau Claire in December of 1987, and my major was in mass communications and broadcast journalism.
Oh, so natural fit.
Natural fit. And I literally can remember standing in Zorn Arena after graduation, hating my major. I just was not interested in it anymore, and I thought to myself, what do I do now? And my best friend at the time had just started flight school at Fort Rucker. He was heading off to Fort Rucker, Alabama. We had been friends for years. And I can't remember the conversation that led up to it, but he brought me to Madison one day. I talked to an Air Force recruiter, and they told me, hey, come back in 6 months. They must have met their quota. And so I literally went next door to the Army recruiter, Staff Sergeant Jim Collins was his name. And a couple of weeks later, I was in Fort Bliss, Texas at basic training. So I'd always had an interest in the military, but I think it was my brother-in-law at the time that got me, pushed me that extra step to have me enlist. And it was the best decision I ever made in my life.
Yeah, I was going to say, a lot of times it comes from family. Either parents served or whatever it may be.
Right. So I was the first to go to college out of my family, first and only to join the military out of my family. So I think what inspired me, though, was my best friend at the time, like I said, and his father was a colonel at the time. And I saw them, was around them quite a bit. And I think somehow that inspired me to give the military a shot. And like I said, it was the best decision I ever made.
It's interesting. So how many years served then?
I was just shy of 32.
Okay. So about 32 years.
Yep.
A lot changes over that time.
Yeah.
What did you believe about leadership then versus what you learned about it over 32 years and now?
Yeah, where it really changed was after 9/11. Before 9/11, I belonged to the Wisconsin Army National Guard, and, our drill weekends were basically, learning how to shoot your weapons, some squad, platoon and company level training, civil disturbance training, that type of stuff. And I can remember telling my wife, you never have to worry about me going to war, because if I go to war, it'll be after the Army band. It's never going to happen. Just at that time, the National Guard was never called upon. Well, then 9/11 hits and everything changed. And I can literally remember watching friends deploy overseas, and I'm sure we'll get to that part of my story, but I just felt I had to do more. And so the leadership prior to 9/11 was very, I hate to say that National Guard, I guess what people thought of the Guard, drinking, goofing around, nothing real serious, which it wasn't. We trained, but after 9/11, it shifted to 100% focused on war and protecting the homeland and going off and serving your country. So a huge mind change after 9/11.
That's interesting. So pre 9/11, you're telling Jill, yeah, you don't have to worry about me.
Yep.
And then post 9/11,
Yeah.
you might have to worry about me.
Yeah.
And what rank were you right around that 2001 time?
2001, I would have been a major.
Okay.
Yeah.
And so you're thinking through this, you have the potential of going, what was it like to be first called to go overseas?
Well, what happened is I was on orders working what's called a rear det assignment. So this unit had deployed to Iraq. I was called upon to manage the full-time staff in the armories, the stuff, the equipment, the soldiers that were left behind that didn't deploy. And so I was at Volk Field and watching these units come and go to Iraq. And my boss at the time mentioned about this Echo Troop 105th Cav he was hearing rumors that they may be called upon to go to Iraq. And I got to thinking, maybe that's my chance to go. In my mind, I'm thinking as a major that, again, I had no idea what this unit was going to be composed of, what they were going to do for a mission. I knew nothing about it. But I was flying out to Walter Reed to visit a soldier that had lost part of his leg in Iraq. And I was flying out with the Deputy Adjutant General for the state of Wisconsin at the time, Kerry Denson. He was a 1-star. And I approached him as we're getting ready to board our Lear jet to fly out to see this soldier. And I went up to General Denson. I said, "Sir, I hear Echo Troop 105th Cav is deploying. Do you know if they would need a major?" And I remember his words vividly, quote unquote. He turned to me, he goes, "Do you want to be the commander?" And it just took me back, because in my mind, I was expecting to go as like a staff position. And when he turned to me and said, "Do you want to be the commander?" I was just like, I can remember I said yes, but I was so fearful. I didn't know what I had just gotten into. It just caught me off guard. And it was just like, oh my God, what did I get myself into? And then we went to Walter Reed. And then that night I had to come home and tell Jill and the boys eventually that I was going to Iraq.
How long after 9/11 was that?
That was 2006 when I volunteered. And then my unit left for Iraq in 2007.
Okay.
Yeah.
So a number of years.
Yeah.
I always look back and think about how, and people still talk about it on 9/12.
Yeah.
How united we were as a country.
I wish we'd get back to that.
Yeah. And at the same point, we've had different commander-in-chief changes that happens, every 4 or 8 years.
Yep.
We've had a lot more information come out about 9/11,
Mm-hmm.
the official story that a lot of us don't believe, including myself.
Me too.
But at the same point, you have orders.
Yeah.
And you have orders to follow with that chain of command.
Yeah.
And so what's it like taking young men and women overseas and when you're in a leadership position, You're not on the battlefield with them.
Mm-hmm.
What's it like commanding a unit that they know, and you know that there's a risk of them not coming home or not coming home in one piece?
Yeah, that's a great question. So once I got to know what my unit would be doing and where we were going, I found out that we would be comprised of 187 men only. So I was taking men. But what made our unit so unique is that Echo Troop 105th Cav, based out of Antigo and Merrill, all of those soldiers had been taken by the 32nd Brigade and had just deployed. So when Echo Troop got tasked, the Department of Defense didn't know that these soldiers had just deployed. So Echo Troop gets tasked. I volunteer as the commander. Next thing I find out is I have to have volunteers from all over the state of Wisconsin make up this unit of 187 soldiers. So we literally did not know each other. Most National Guard units, the soldiers have been together for years. They're like family. They're bonded together. They've gone to drills for years and they know each other. So I literally had a Mu to 5, which is a Friday night, Saturday, and Sunday drill in April and May. So I had seen my guys for 5 days before we went downrange to Camp Shelby to train up. So we had to do the storming, forming, and norming and performing very quickly. And out of the 187 guys, I eventually took 173 to Iraq. And where I was blessed is that I really felt that I would be getting the bottom of the barrel as far as soldiers because a lot of units had already deployed. I couldn't have been more wrong. The guys that stepped up were absolutely phenomenal at not only taking care of themselves, but taking care of the soldiers. And I think what really made that is, these are all Midwestern people, dual jobs. Not only are they soldiers, but they're farmers, teachers, maybe they were a librarian, maybe they owned a business, whatever. And these guys really stepped up. I was able to pick a small handful. I picked my executive officer and my sergeant major that went with me, and they were phenomenal. So I look at our success, and because we were such a unique unit and higher risk because we didn't know each other, but I look at our success because of the non-commissioned officers that I had working with me. And then my executive officer, Bill Barthen, and my sergeant major were just top notch. And I've always felt it is so important to surround myself with good people. I worked with a number of leaders that I think are a little intimidated if there's somebody around them that is as smart or smarter than them. And I've never felt that way. I wanted to take the best.
Yeah.
And I don't care if I'm not the smartest guy in the room. We're a team. We're going to get through this. We're going to figure it out. And we brought everyone home, as you mentioned earlier.
Yeah, which is unbelievable. What happened to the 14 that you cut?
The 14, so when any unit deploys, the state of Wisconsin does an excellent job of making sure that they're medically and administratively ready to go. All the paperwork in case something happens, their pay, their medical files. But when we got down to Camp Shelby, there were a few guys, these 14, a couple got hurt. The other guys had PTSD issues. When we started getting into the counter IED training, these guys had previous combat experience. Some of them just couldn't handle it. And so they opted out, which was fine, which is absolutely fine.
Yeah.
So,
you can't have someone freezing on the battlefield or not being able to perform. Yeah. That's what I was curious about, because I didn't know if it was a culture thing, if they were unable to perform the task or anything of that nature.
All good soldiers, but some guys, handle it differently. So,
yeah. So what's it like sitting in a command post now? Okay. So you train them up. You're in a command post. They go out on mission. They're in their different platoons. So it's not all 173 going out at the same time, right?
Right. So we were doing convoy security. And so in each convoy, there would be 30 semis that we would be escorting to make sure they got from point A to point B safely. And so on any given mission, there would be probably 25 to 30 of my soldiers escorting these 30 semis to wherever. And then we would have multiple convoys going out each night. I did 26 of those missions myself. Overall, the unit did 350. There were nights we would have 2 convoys out on the road. There were nights we would have 5 convoys out on the road. And in that situation, we would hardly have anybody left in our motor pool area. But obviously, we needed some people back to run the administrative and logistical aspects of everything. But when these guys went out on the road, there was never a time where I feared myself getting hurt or them getting hurt. I felt we were that well trained. And we had a great task force commander out of the 101st Airborne who wanted us to be aggressive, but yet don't look for a fight. But if somebody brings a fight to you, you've got
carte blanche.
Go for it.
Yeah.
Make it happen. So get those people there safely from point A to point B.
It's interesting you say you didn't fear that because they were so well trained. And at the same point, like we lost a lot of soldiers and a lot of that made it back, but losing a leg or losing a limb because of IEDs.
Right.
I remember one of my good friends, he was in my brother's class at Edgewood High, was a Marine. And I can't remember his rank, sergeant or something, but he commanded. And I said, he was early on in that. So right after 2001, he was there. When he came back, I asked him, I was like, how'd you avoid the IEDs? He said, stayed off the fucking roads.
Yeah. And we were always on the roads.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because they knew where the well-traveled path was.
Yep.
And they were going to try and inflict maximum damage to stop you guys.
I had a sergeant, an E5. When I got over there, the unit that we were replacing had a captain that every day would come in, sit down at the secret computer and look at all the significant acts, we call them SIG acts, that happened the previous night. And then they would plot those on a map. And then that captain would brief the convoy commanders on which areas to avoid. So if we were heading south towards Baghdad, for example, he would say, avoid this area, cross over, head in the northbound lane for this far, and then cross back over. I didn't have that at the time, and it really scared me. How was I going to have this intel? Because I didn't have time to do it. And I had this E5, this sergeant, step up, and every day he would come in, sit at my computer, and then brief the convoy commanders before they went out. And there's only one person that knows how many people he saved, and that's the good Lord. By his work in telling where the hot spots were, I think that's why we brought everybody home. One of the reasons why we brought everyone home.
Well, this leads me to my next question is like, you led over 350 missions and brought everyone home. I think what I want to ask here is, because it has business application to it, not just military, what habits, systems, and leadership principles made that possible?
I think before we left, I got in front of the formation and told them that this is my first time in combat. There's a number of you that have been in combat before. I don't care what rank you are. We're going to work as a team. If you have an idea, bring that forward. We may not use it, but we may, and it may be something life-saving. We don't know. So I think the teamwork approach.
Stop right there.
Okay.
That was so good. Before you move on, because I want everyone to capture that, is think about this as like you're running your business and you got to know that people are intimidated by your position, by your authority, because you cut their paycheck. In the military, everything's chain of command.
Yeah.
And so if you don't lead with that humility, they're never bringing that idea to you. And I want the business owner to understand that that's the same thing. And there's not chain of command there necessarily, or a stringent of one, but they're still intimidated by bringing that idea back. And you got to lead with that humility to say, look, I don't always have the best ideas.
Right.
You may have a great idea. And if we're focused on what is right and not who is right, you may have the best idea and we may need to run with that.
Exactly.
So, but I'm never going to know that if you don't bring it to me.
Exactly. I think the other thing too is I made myself, and I'm not tooting my own horn, but anytime I've led, I've made myself approachable. I knew all 173 of my guys. I knew them by their first name and last name. I would talk to them. I grew up on a dairy farm. There's nothing special about me. And I've always felt I am no better than anyone else. They knew I'm the boss. I don't need to tell them that I'm the commander. They know that. And I think being approachable, being personable, getting down to their level, understanding who they are, understanding that they have families and issues and concerns, but them knowing too that their mission is extremely important. I don't care if they're a private first class. If they have an idea, bring it forward and we're going to implement it. For example, one day I was walking into our motor pool, and obviously in Iraq, there's dust everywhere. Well, somebody had an idea of let's get tarps and cover all the vehicles at night. It seems like a simple idea, but no one had thought of it. Somebody brought that up, and sure enough, we implemented it, and it probably saved, you don't know if maybe that amount of sand could jam up a 50 cal weapon some night, but this tarp now prevented that, and you're good to go. So like I said, I don't care what rank they were. I don't care if they're a new enlisted soldier. If you've got an idea, bring it forward.
Right. It's like the entrepreneurial conversation we were talking about before we got on the mics, right? The ideas are the one, or what's spawned every business
right
ever existing.
And it's the guys in the trenches that figure that stuff out. It's not me sitting in an office planning the next day's missions. It's the person that's in the trenches that has to do it, that has those ideas, but in many times they're scared to bring it forward. But I wanted to make sure that if you've got an idea, bring that forward.
Yeah, that's awesome. What other systems or habits you think could attributed to the great leadership and bringing everyone back?
I think just the mindset, and again, I credit that to our task force commander out of the 101st. Now, he was active duty. We were all, the units that fell under him, except for one, were all National Guard units. But because he was active duty, he brought a mindset, and again, he was very approachable type of person. He brought the mindset that I want you to be aggressive. I want you to get the job done. And again, if we had ideas, we would bring those forward to him. He came out, he went on missions with us, just like I would go out on missions with all the platoons that I was in charge of. He came down and led us too, and we could see that he was leading from the front. I let my NCOs, and I had to really rein in my platoon leaders. Now, again, the platoon leaders are in charge of these soldiers that are leading these convoys. I had to tell the platoon leaders, when you go out on a mission with Sergeant so-and-so or Staff Sergeant so-and-so, let them lead. They are in charge of the convoy unless they call you with a question or have an issue or you come under fire and they need your help. But otherwise, you sit back and let them lead. Let that person be in charge and take care of the people that they're leading on that convoy. And a few of the platoon leaders at first had struggled with that because they're in charge of that platoon, but over time they understood that. And I think what that did for the overall unit, they knew they could go out and accomplish a mission and they didn't have these restraints. They knew if something happened, I would have their back because I had to go up to the task force commander a number of times and explain why something happened. And I knew he had our back too. So I think that trickled down to the soldiers that they knew they could go out, do what they needed to do. And I think because of that, there was a unit that we flew over with. There was units before us and units after us that all lost soldiers. But by the grace of God, we brought everyone home, all 173 guys. So I think that mindset was so important. The guys knew they could go out and perform their mission, don't have to worry what Major Murphy's going to say or if I'm going to get in trouble for doing something. If they saw something out on the road that they needed to act or do something a certain way, go for it. If it's something we need to fix, we'll fix it. We'll fix it later.
Yeah, that's awesome. And you also brought up leading by example from both the guy from the 101st and yourself going out on missions, not just staying in the office and telling them what to do.
Right.
Which is a great lesson for all business owners as well.
Yep.
Don't be afraid to get in the trenches with your folks.
Exactly.
They appreciate it.
Exactly.
You're not demeaning yourself in any way by doing it. When did you start, going back to the 9/11 example, when did you start your skepticism over the official narrative they gave us?
I think over the years, just stuff right after 9/11, no. And same way with going to Iraq. It's like, I'm doing this for my country. Well, now if you ask me now, should we have gone to Iraq? Absolutely not. We had no reason to be there. The 9/11 narrative, I think just over the course of years, I lived in D.C. for 3 years and worked at the Pentagon and worked right in the G1 area where the plane hit. Supposedly. I do have one very good friend that was there the day the whatever hit the Pentagon, and he claims it was a plane. I think just over the course of probably the last 10 years maybe, I've just seen and read, and by working at the Pentagon and saw where the plane hit and, or whatever hit it, and the angle of the hole in the building. And then you start to hear things about what happened with the Twin Towers and fuel burning steel and, allegedly the conspiracy theory about the explosives. And as you hear about this stuff, some people, if you talk to them about it, they think you're nuts. But I have a ton of questions that I would love to sit down with experts. Like building 7?
No reason to fall. No plane hit it.
And the way all 3 of these buildings fell straight down is how controlled detonations happen.
Yeah.
I mean, there are just so many questions that I have that I'm very skeptical about the story that we've been given.
Yeah, and I was just curious at that because I was wondering like what it's like to lead with those questions in your head and still going out and doing your job.
I think at the time though in Iraq, I didn't have those questions in my head. Those questions came afterwards because even when we went to Iraq, we were told that there were weapons of mass destruction over there. Okay, we're going over there to do what we need to do. But then over the course of time, and you hear and figure out who's in charge and who's making a lot of money off of the military industrial complex and what we're doing over there, you start to have questions, and then you start talking to people, you start reading stuff, you see stuff on social media, and then it's like, something's not right.
Yep. Well, I mean, it was a 20+ year war if you count Iraq, Afghanistan.
And just think of the money.
Yeah.
And for years, we were always told after every conflict, we're leaving the equipment there because it's too expensive to bring back. Bullshit.
No.
Bullshit. And Trump said it. Put a half a tank of gas in and put it on a boat and bring it back.
That's right. Well, then not only, anyone with half a brain goes, wait, how does that make sense? Because not only just the half a tank thing, it's if you see and how much does it cost to build a F-16? How much does it cost to build a tank? Like whatever it may be, like, the cost of these things are in the millions and millions of dollars.
And just think if we have to remake that, rebuild it, how much money is being made.
That's right. Well, even I got to do the boss flight with the Air National Guard because my former chief marketing officer is Air National Guard, and he got me on that. And then after we did the refueling flight, which was awesome, we got to go into the IED room, and I was messing around with the robot and just picking up a marker and putting it in the bucket and just simple stuff, but just to be exposed to that. And I go, hey, how much does that thing cost? And they're like, $250,000. Right. And the things like the size of maybe a ice maker, $250,000. That's the price of, a house. Right. So just that little thing, let alone an F-16 tank, Apache helicopter, or whatever that we're leaving behind. Yeah. Doesn't make any sense.
No. And when I got to Iraq, everything was going to hardstand, wooden buildings. I literally saw holes being dug and tents being pushed into these holes. In our motor pool alone, we had a Connex that was filled with physical fitness equipment. Hundreds of sets of physical fitness equipment. And you're thinking, why is that sitting here? Why isn't it being taken to somebody who needs the equipment? And the amount of boots we were given, the amount of uniforms we were given. Before 9/11, I was in Madison working for a major. I think I was a lieutenant at the time. And we got to September, the end of the fiscal year. And my boss told me we were working drug demand reduction. He said, we need to burn up this money. I was buying 30-minute VHS tapes for over $1,200. And this was early 90s. And it pissed me off because my wife was a teacher and she couldn't even afford weekly readers for the kids. But here I am buying VHS videos talking about drugs. They'd have some football player or some Hollywood star talking about, don't do drugs. And I was paying $1,200 per tape. And if you bought 3 tapes, you'd get a free VCR, literally. And I'm thinking, look at the money we are wasting.
So let me get this straight. One VHS tape.
$1,200.
That costs $10, $12.
$1,200. And this was early 90s.
Remember the report that used to come out? I don't remember. It was some presidential report, though. The toilet cost $30,000, and they actually used to do this government waste report, and then all of a sudden that went away.
Yeah.
I remember being in high school and seeing these numbers. It's like, what is this toilet seat made of freaking gold?
Yeah. What they do is, what I believe that happens is that these contractors know the breaking point that they can charge something before it would be investigated or looked into. And so, I'm going to charge $10,000 for this toilet seat or whatever. They knew the breaking point, or, they just knew how to get around the system. When I worked at the Pentagon, right when I got there, they needed a study done. And I'm not going to mention the company that did it, but I went upstairs thinking it was going to cost $2 million for this 1-year study. And I went up to my boss's boss to ask for this $2 million. They didn't bat an eye. It was like giving you $5. They could have cared less. I could have asked for $20 million. They wouldn't have batted an eye.
Because it's not their money.
Right.
It's our money.
Right.
And that's what should piss everyone off.
Yeah.
And the fact that Elon was getting so much hate for actually looking into this stuff is absolutely crazy.
Yeah. And it's crazy. And I know we're getting off topic a little bit, but when you hear about the fraud with people that shouldn't be getting the benefits that we are paying taxes for, and people are still upset with the current administration because but they're being fed by the media.
Yeah.
Too. They're being fed by the media.
Well, absolutely. We're not off topic. We're right on topic.
Good.
That's how my ADD brain works. But speaking of, you have, I had two different things there that were going through my mind at the same time. So we have all this cost and waste right now, but at the same time, we have the government shutdown as we're sitting here today. Mm-hmm. Whereas, how's that affect our service members? Because I know they're not getting paid during this time frame. What's their mindset? What's their mentality? Is there
just go do their job? My son is a perfect example. He's over in Germany right now. He's an intel officer, and he's not getting paid, but he goes to work every day and does his job. And, you hope, my hope as a father that worries about, that type of stuff, you hope with the current administration, because they are so pro-military, maybe something will something will happen that if the government does stay shut down for a period of time, maybe, hopefully, I don't know if it's even legal, but something could be passed to pay our military so they can pay
That's
their
the
bills.
only ones I want to pay.
Exactly.
I don't give a shit about any other government employee. And someone may say that's crass, but I don't think that most of them are necessary. But our military is.
Yeah, and I hope they whittle down the government. Another example, when I was at the Pentagon, the waste. Some general would come up with an idea, and then a division would have to be stood up, and a division was probably made up of, anywhere from 4 to 10 people. And think about that. I was out at the Pentagon as a colonel making a lot of money, and the benefits they have to pay, the healthcare they have to pay, the per diem and the housing allowance, because DC is so expensive. So if you're a general and you come up with this idea, and all of a sudden, okay, now it's given the okay to bring in 5, 6, 10 guys, just think of the money that's costing. And a lot of these issues that were brought up, you don't need that many people working them. You could give Josh or Mike another task to do. You don't need to bring in 10 new people. That's going to cost $1 million to $2 million a year, you know, of more taxpayer money. So,
well, you probably know this, but the majority of the listeners may not. Who's the only people in the government being paid right now during a government shutdown?
Congress people.
Yeah. So your politicians are exempt from the government shutdown, and they continue to get paid to not do their job.
They make all the rules.
Yep. So that should piss everyone off too.
Yeah.
They should be the first ones not getting paid because they're the ones causing the fucking shutdown.
And when our country was first stood up, from my understanding, the people representing us got paid a per diem. They weren't paid a wage.
They weren't paid a salary.
Exactly.
No, that needs to go away.
Exactly.
Actually, in fact, my belief is the only people that should be serving us are people that don't need the money.
Yep.
Because this is the problem we've got into. This is where we see Pelosi's stock portfolio go up infinite number.
And if you do that or I do it, we're in prison.
Or even local, Mark Pocan, he was not a wealthy man going into Congress, but now he's very wealthy.
Yeah.
How's that happen?
Yeah.
So it's just one of those things where like the people, so when someone brings up the argument that Trump's not qualified because he didn't have political experience, I was like, what makes someone with political experience qualified? Like, what about being in politics, or in Obama's case, a community organizer, then state senator? What about that makes them qualified? Mm-hmm. Because if you ever go to DC, and not you, because I know you've been there and lived there, but for me, I went for 6 years actually as a government relations delegate for my company. And you learn that 25, 26-year-olds are technically running the country. Mm-hmm. All the staffers of these Congress people are the ones actually reading the bills, are the ones actually helping them make a decision regarding a vote or whatever it may be. Mm-hmm. And you get to understand it a little bit. It's impossible to know everything about everything that they're voting on. So I understand that. The problem is when those 25, 26-year-olds are making decisions for the Congress people, that's a problem.
Yeah. There's so many things that need to be, rectified, term limits. bills should be one thing. You're voting on one, maybe two things or whatever, 5 things, not hundreds of things. And then they throw all this pork in there to that nobody reads. Term limits would be huge, like I said, and just the morals, getting back to serving the country instead of serving yourself.
Serving the people that actually put you there.
Exactly.
That's it. So you served under Reagan, 87, right? Is when you started. So you joined the military. So Reagan, Bush, Clinton, Bush, Obama,
Trump.
And Trump.
Yeah.
Right?
I'll tell you a story about that. I was at the Pentagon when Trump won his first term, and the female colonel in the next office next to me was working on transgender policy at that time. And our numbers in the military had been dropping. Literally, the day after Trump won the election, all that work on transgender and what needs to be done so we can have transgenders in the military and so on and so forth was done. And we focused strictly on recruiting, getting the numbers up, and the stuff that we needed to be as warriors working on, and all this other BS was out the window. Literally the next day, but depending who's in office, drives the train.
Yeah, that's what I was going to ask you. So 6 different presidents, some of them you probably voted for, some of them you didn't. Mm-hmm. What's it like to lead under each different style, each different commander in chief?
Well, I think you can see it right now with the numbers for recruiting have skyrocketed because of the administration that we have in there. I've worked under leadership that you really wonder if they have your back. You wonder if the rules of engagement, if they would have your back during war, if you apply rules of engagement that you think are correct. I think with somebody, the people that are in charge right now with the Secretary of War and the president that we have, I feel, even being retired, and I believe that's why our numbers are so high.
But your son's not retired.
He's not retired.
So now you're acting as a father.
Right. But I think these people that are now serving feel they have a mission, they have transparency, they have direction, they have somebody that has their back, and their well-being is taken very seriously, and that they're being taken care of, besides the pay right now, but hopefully that gets fixed. But, you think back to even 4 years ago, a lot of people had their concerns about our current Secretary of War, Secretary of Defense, that's currently in charge, Pete Hegseth. I was thrilled when he was selected to be the secretary. He's got military experience. He retired as a major. Yeah, no big deal. He didn't have that general under his belt, but I think that's okay. And what he brings as far as physical fitness, getting back to the basics. I don't know if you listened to his speech.
I'm going to ask about that in just a minute.
I emailed a friend and I said, I wish I could join the military again. I was that excited about what he was saying.
Yeah, because that's the thing is you go and look at what China does or what Russia does. Like, those are some beastly humans. They're training them for battle, not training them for a drag show.
Yep.
Like, that's the thing is, you even go back to that movie G.I. Jane.
Yeah.
Right? You remember seeing that?
Yeah.
Like, I watched that as a kid, like understood, and probably wouldn't even fly today. I don't even know if that movie would fly today, but like, yeah, she got harassed, but at the same time, they're making sure if she was going to qualify. And I realize it's a movie, Hollywood has its own thing, but at the same point is like, there's a physical standard. Like, if you got to carry your brother or sister off the field of battle, you got to be physically able to do that.
Yep.
You got to have endurance to fight for hours upon hours. Yep. Think about Marcus Luttrell and how he was able to pull his body on, like, army crawl on the ground because it was so shot up that I heard him speak pretty early after that happened. He was still a mess mentally at that point. Mm-hmm. And he talked about, like, he just focused on the next crawl, the next spot in front of him. That was the only thing that got him to the villagers that ended up saving his life. Yeah. Like, that's a physical endurance battle, mental battle to fight through. And if you can't do it, you're not going to be able to protect the person next to you, let alone the country. Yeah.
I want somebody next to me in the foxhole that exactly what you said, Josh, that if something happens to me, they can pull me out and get me to safety. And again, I don't care what color they are. I don't care what religion they are. I am so against DEI. I want the person next to me that is there because he or she, merit-based, has what it takes, not only to save my ass, but to save theirs too. I want the best, whether I'm flying.
Well, it's meritocracy.
Yeah.
And that's what we should always have been in the military of all places. I believe it belongs in all of business as well. Mm-hmm. Like you said, it doesn't matter color, doesn't matter religion, doesn't matter sex. It's who's the best person for the job.
Exactly.
And the military of all places should be that. Yeah.
And when you fly or have an operation, do you care if the person is a female or male or black or no? You want the best. I want the best person in the cockpit. I want the best person that's operating on me. I've had 2 cancer surgeries. I didn't care what the doctor looked like. I wanted the best.
Yeah.
And that's the way we should be across the board.
That's right. So going back to Pete Hegseth's talk, I heard this number, and maybe you can affirm this, that there was 44 generals in that room, or was it 144?
It's probably, I didn't hear the number, but it's probably more than that. Generals and admirals.
Generals and admirals.
Way too top heavy.
And that's the point I was going to make, is if we go back to World War II, I may screw up these numbers, but it's going to be close. I think that the generals at that time had about 6,000 under their command. Mm-hmm. And today we're at like 1,600.
Probably.
So way too top heavy, which deals with bureaucracy. Way more bureaucracy than there ever was. And we're not in a wartime right now.
Right.
Whereas in World War II is probably the biggest time we're in wartime.
Yeah. I mean, again, if you go out to the Pentagon, you'll see admirals and generals all over the place. They're not leading anybody. They're just in charge of something or working for a 2-star or a 3-star or a 4-star. And, the 4-stars have generals working for them, and each general has, a pile of generals or admirals working for him or her. So it's extremely top heavy, extremely top heavy. Another thing that I think needs to be looked at is BRAC, base realignment and closure. We've got a lot of bases and facilities out there that probably should be shut down or combined. They used to do this years ago. It hasn't been mentioned forever because any congressperson that represents an area that potentially could be shut down, they don't want to lose those jobs. And I understand that, but there's a lot of waste and duplication going on in our military at our installations too. So we could save money there.
Yeah.
And maybe that's something that Pete will look at, in the future.
Hopefully. We need to get rid of as much government waste as possible. Yep. What can CEOs, entrepreneurs, or even community leaders learn from how the military builds trust and accountability within its ranks?
What can they learn? To me, I think what they can learn is, to trust the people that work for you. And I think something that I said earlier, I've carried with me forever is to, yes, you may be in charge, but, work as a team, have everyone involved, treat your people like adults. We were at a friend's house last night talking, and we got talking about different jobs and how a friend of ours, my wife and I just had a friend that got fired because he used a punch clock, punched out from work, and then went to another place of his employment and was doing work before he went home. But he had punched out, and the reason he punched out is the clock was 10, 12 miles away from his house. So he would punch out, drive to his hometown, do some other things for the business, and then go home. And they fired him for that. And I'm thinking, that is so wrong. First of all, punch clocks, I hate. Let's treat people like adults. Trust, have the trust in the people that you hire and that are working for you. Mm-hmm. And you may have 1 or 2 that take advantage of that, but the majority of your people are going to do great for you and go that extra mile for you. I've always hated time cards, punch clocks, any of that stuff. So have the trust there, work as a team, humble yourself as a leader to be approachable, be personable, get to know your people, understand they have. The first time I took a platoon, I brought in every soldier, again, only about 30 soldiers, but over the course of my drill weekends, I would bring in one at a time, get to know who they were, who their spouse was, their name, their kids, possibly their birthdays, stuff that was bothering them, things they wanted to accomplish in their career, get to know. I would have soldiers that would come in that would say, I've been really trying to get this school for the last year or so, and I can't get it. Well, then me as a leader, I would look into that. Why can't he or she get into that school? follow up on things that your soldiers or your workers, your employees bring to you. Just be yourself. I think it's so critical, and something that I've utilized over the course of my time in leadership is just be yourself. You don't have to put on a show that you're somebody that you're not. And like I said, prior, my first formation, I got up front and told the guys, and I've never heard anyone say this to their people. And again, I'm not boasting about myself, but I told them, I do not know everything that we need to know. I need your help to bring everyone home. And they, like I said, they all know I'm the boss, but I need everyone's input. They have to know that I have their back. And we are such a family. To this day, the 173 soldiers that I took overseas, about 145 of us have our own private Facebook page that we communicate with. I was just in Germany last month. Now, we've been home 18 years. I would lay down to go to bed. I got a direct message from a soldier. He said, "Sir, can I call you?" And I'm like, "I'm just going to bed. Can we talk tomorrow?" He goes, "No, I'm really struggling." I was on the phone for an hour. This is 18 years after we got home. They know, and it's not just me. We rely on each other. Mm-hmm. I've reached out to some of my soldiers when I have issues going on, and we talk and we get through those things. So I don't know if I answered your question, but I think
no, you did.
Being yourself, and
there's a lot in there. And kind of surmise what you just said, or summarize anyhow, is leaders that care more win more.
Yeah, exactly.
And so it's not just being yourself, because if you're being yourself and you actually don't give a shit, that's a problem.
Yeah.
So giving a shit, and leaders that care more and show they care more win more.
And I worked for a number of leaders that were more worried about their career. And so, to your face, they may be nice to you and, whatever. But as soon as you turned around, they were stepping on you to get their next advancement. And I worked with a number of leaders like that. And
yeah, and you started with trust too, which is a big thing. So like, just so everyone knows, in my businesses, I don't have scheduled vacation times or stuff like that. Like they can take vacation, and, as long as the job gets done, we don't worry about that stuff. We don't worry about a clock. And that's stuff that we've evolved to, because when you hire great people, they know what job they need to get done.
The other thing that I did, anytime I took command, you'd have to write your command philosophy and give it to all your soldiers. The first thing that I put on there, if you have a family, and don't take advantage of this, but if you have a family and your child or your wife or something, your husband has something extremely important that's happening, get out of here. Go to it. We will figure it out. We'll get it done. But your family is always first. I believe that, because when you retire, 5 minutes after you're gone, they're not going to remember who you are. But your kid's going to remember if you were not sitting in the stands, or if you were sitting in the stands watching him or her play a sport or something at school. Yeah. And I think a lot of soldiers, like when I took battalion commander, even when we went to Iraq, hadn't heard that often enough, that you need to take care of yourself first and your family first. We'll figure things out. We'll get it done.
Yeah, that's really good. So transitioning from service, you talked a little bit about that with soldier calling you that was struggling. Mm-hmm. Many veterans struggle to find purpose outside the uniform.
Yeah.
And this is what's leading to a lot of mental health and suicide amongst our veterans.
Yep.
What was the transition like for you after almost 32 years, and how do you continue to serve now, or how do you continue to help those that were under your command?
It's going to be a lengthy answer here, but I was fortunate that when I came home, I was still kept on active duty for another 3.5 years, working a rear dead assignment and an assignment up at Fort McCoy. A lot of soldiers come home, and a week later, they're back at their civilian job. Now imagine this. Josh is out leading a convoy, in charge of millions of dollars worth of equipment, in charge of getting that convoy from point A to point B, in charge of the weapon systems, in charge of the route, in charge of 25 soldiers and 30 truck drivers to get them safely from point A to point B. Risk assessments, the planning of that mission, you're in charge of all that. A week later, you come home and now you're working at Costco stocking a shelf. What do you think that does to a soldier's mind? It just, their friends are gone. They're not. I'll give you a personal story. I went back to my civilian job after being home for 3 years, or still in active duty 3 years after I came home. I went back to my civilian job as a unit manager at this facility. I was not allowed to make the decision to put a pizza oven on one of the wings for our patients. I just commanded 173 guys, life and death situations. I had signed for $450 million worth of equipment. How many days in combat? And I come home and my boss won't let me make the decision to put a pizza oven on the wing. What do you think that does to my mind?
Complete demoralization.
Totally. And, for me, when I came home, I was lucky that I stayed on active duty for 3 years. But a lot of these guys, like I said, go right back to their civilian job, and the depression and the PTSD sets in. I've lost 2 soldiers to suicide since we got back. If they don't have a strong family support system, again, if their friends are gone, they turn to alcoholism or drugs. Some people that I was really close to in Iraq have just disappeared, and I'm trying to find them. I think I found one of the soldiers out in Washington State. I've reached out to him, haven't heard anything back. Another guy's up in Neillsville. I've reached out to him, haven't heard anything back, but I'm going to continue trying. It is so tough. And for me personally, when I came back, I was very angry. Still don't sleep well. I'm lucky if I sleep 3 hours and wake up.
What's the anger come from?
I've been seeing a psychiatrist and a psychologist for years. And he asked me, he goes, Mike, were you ever scared in theater in Iraq? And I said, no, I was never scared. He goes, well, let me tell you what happens when soldiers, an average person has something frightening happen to them 6 or 7 times a year where the adrenaline just flows through the body. Yeah. And he said, when you're in Iraq, we don't know why, or in combat, when you come home, there's a slow drip from your mind, from your brain throughout your body of adrenaline. And that's what causes soldiers to have this anxiety, anger, all that type of stuff. And I've dealt that the first 5 years after I got home. I even told Jill one day, I said, we need to split up because I am not treating you the way you should be treated. I was just angry, pissed off. If something wasn't done at home, I would go off the handle, not sleeping well. And,
not sleeping well compounds it.
Yeah. And just over time, I had a psychiatrist that unfortunately just moved to Indiana, so I don't get to talk to him virtually anymore. But he's given me so many tools that I put in my toolbox that I use every day. And it's a struggle every day. I look at it as kind of like having these files up on a shelf that I don't want my brain to go down this rabbit hole. And sometimes I'm pulling them out and I have to use these tools that they've helped me put back in my toolbox to push that file back in so I don't let myself go down that path. Little devotions every day. I'm very private about my spirituality and my religion, but truly believe and I pray every day. Exercise is huge to me. I'm not as fit as you are, but I hit the gym every day, and I haven't hit it I'm going this afternoon, but if I miss a couple of days in a row, my mind is just, there are things that happen when you exercise that are good for you. You know that. Yeah,
and what you're talking about too with the cortisol, adrenaline, all the different neurochemicals that go along with it. When I was talking to my doctor about my testosterone being so low, he mentioned this, and it's just coming back to me. It says any high-level athlete or any military, ex-military, typically have low testosterone. It completely screws up their endocrine system because of those adrenal dumps. And the cortisol stress levels that go into, being in a firefight or being potentially shot at or whatever it may be, it completely messes with the adrenal system, that messes with your brain and your body in all different sorts of ways. So there's got to be some ways that we can help our military guys coming back.
And we don't do a good job when we come home. We had 3 reintegration meetings for my unit when we got back, and it was basically go into this room, listen to these PowerPoint slides, check the box, sign your name, and out the door you go. And there's no the stuff like you were just talking about, the mental health, what happens internally to your body, your job, your family support system, all of that stuff. We do not do a good job at doing that.
And it's actually so simple. And you think about the money spent, like these tests, these 2 tests, the blood test and the other test that I did, which was spit and urine, saliva for anyone that doesn't care for the spit word, but maybe $1,000 combined. You think about the millions the military is spending. You get these done, and so like the blood test, obviously you can get a lot of markers within your blood, but the saliva and urine was able to key in on my endocrine system. Mm-hmm. And when I was meeting with the doc on it, he's like, you're kind of a unicorn. And I was like, take that as a point of pride. Like, yeah, I'm a unicorn. He goes, yeah, not in a good way. I was like, dang it. But what he was saying is, he goes, for where your adrenal system is, which was basically in the dirt, you manage your stress really well, your cortisol levels. So he goes, all the things that you do, from cold plunge to exercise to breathing, all those things are Band-Aids, which are keeping your cortisol levels at a low level, and they're not spiking in the day and all that stuff. He goes, now imagine how high functioning you'd be if we fixed the endocrine system. And now your cortisol levels would be even better, and you wouldn't need those Band-Aids. And he's saying, not that you shouldn't continue doing them. It's just, let's fix the root cause and go from there, which could be immensely useful for anyone transitioning out.
That would be massively huge. And 22 suicides a day that are happening, if not more. I mean, there's so much more we could be doing, and I wish the military would spend their money on stuff like that to figure out why this is happening.
Yeah, instead of relying on all the great charities that are trying to help our military folks, and there are some that we support as well.
I can't imagine what's inside my body, because I've had 2 cancer surgeries since I've gotten back. They've taken out my prostate. I mean, I can't imagine what deficiencies I have going on, and maybe that's the reason why I've been seeing a psychiatrist.
Well, I'll tell you this, one of the so I took these natural we'll just call them pills, whatever, supplements for 3 months that he gave me after I did that test. And I wear my Whoop band daily, and so I do my journal in my app and all that. The one thing I noticed the most, I can't say that I noticed the spike in energy during the day. I can't say that I noticed some monumental change. What I did notice based on my sleep data is that I was typically averaging 3 hours per night of deep and REM sleep. Mm-hmm. Didn't matter, as long as I got that, it didn't matter if I slept a total of 5 hours or 8 hours, like 3 hours of deep REM sleep was fine for me. After the 3 months of that average jumped to 4 hours. And so that's where the energy then comes from, is, again, if I get 5 hours total of sleep, 6 or 8, now if I'm getting 4 hours of deep or REM sleep, like, my body's far more rejuvenated. Yeah. Therefore, I can do the tough workouts. I can put in the extra hours at work or whatever it may be. And so that's what I noticed the most, and I think could help those out there even further. All right. Let's talk about mentorship and legacy. Legacy is one of my favorite. You just read the book, and legacy is one of the bridge on there. Who are some of the leaders that shaped you the most?
Yeah. The greatest leader I had, his name was Scotty Miller, General Scotty Miller. And if you've watched Black Hawk Down, there's not a character per se that represents him in the movie, but he was the on-ground Delta Force commander during Black Hawk Down. And I had the opportunity to meet and work for him when I was at Joint Special Operations Command at Fort Bragg. He was the commanding officer. He was a 3-star at the time. He was the last commander coming out of Afghanistan. He was a 4-star. So he was the last commander that came out of Afghanistan. He was not, that whole debacle that happened there was not his fault. But anyway, getting back to his type of leadership, he was just phenomenal. He was probably, I read an article, he was probably the most lethal military person in our military for what he has accomplished with Delta Force and his job that he was doing at Joint Special Operations Command and what he was in charge of. This guy was extremely knowledgeable, humble, approachable. He knew who you were. One day we were getting ready to do a physical fitness training. He came out of his office, and they had just set up a new confidence course. And he walks by me, and I didn't think he knew me from Adam. And he's like, "Murph, this one's going to hurt a little bit," meaning what we were going to do for physical fitness training. And I'm thinking, how does he even know me? But that's the type of guy he was. And he also set up a system that was very much like Facebook, but it was secret, top secret, where everyone, again, who had an idea could go on and put their ideas into almost like Facebook, where you could go in and read stuff that people were putting in, and it didn't matter what rank.
Kind of like a Slack channel for his division or whatever it may be, right?
And everyone, you just felt like so much a part of a team that was doing great things. So the average person could sleep well at night, and everyone felt like they were a part of something bigger than them and contributing to something bigger to them, but part of that team. And he was just the epitome of a leader. And I still communicate with him once in a while via Facebook. Now that he's retired, he's on Facebook, and I would really like to. I always want him to come to Wisconsin because he's such a great guy. He'd be great to have on your podcast. This guy is extremely knowledgeable, but just if he walked in, you would never know that he's a 4-star general and all of things that he's accomplished in his career, because he's just that type of guy. He's just so humble, but yet somebody that you look up to and respect, and that you admire and want to be. He was definitely the epitome of a leader that I've ever worked for. And then, a number across the years that were just very, very caring, family first oriented, had some spirituality, again, very approachable type of people. I had my boss at the Pentagon, Mike Copenhaver, who lives in Fayetteville, North Carolina. We still communicate and text each other quite often. And again, just a great person. Achieved a lot of great things. He was part of the 82nd Airborne, did a lot of great things, deployed many, many times. But again, he's not out there bragging about that stuff. He's just a good friend, somebody that has your back, that's approachable and knows his stuff, and you want to be like that person. So had quite a few of those over the course of my years, but probably those two I look back and admire the most.
Nice. What's the legacy you hope to leave with either your soldiers, your family, or anyone else?
Well, I just had a good friend of mine who retired as a colonel. I was his TAC officer. So a TAC officer is somebody like very similar to a drill sergeant, only you're going through officer school. So I was training him and getting him to, become the best officer that he could be. And he called me yesterday, and we were talking, and he goes, Mike, and again, I'm not boasting about myself, but he goes, the way you led and the way you put family first, I think about all the leadership positions that I've been in. He's saying this to me, and how that influenced, the 1,500 or so soldiers that I've led over my career. And so hearing that and leaving that type of legacy, that hopefully some of the ways that I led is instilled in some of the future leaders or current leaders that we have. But I think more importantly to me is the legacy that I leave for my family and my kids. Right now, I'm writing down my military story, my memories, and because I want them to have that after I'm gone. I was fortunate enough to be selected, and I'm on the Hall of Fame wall for the Wisconsin Military Academy because of my accomplishments, which is great. And I hope my grandkids go see that after I'm gone and remember Grandpa. But instilling in my boys, I have 2 sons, responsibility, good work ethic, be a person, be a good father, eventually be a good grandfather, be a great son, be responsible, honest, loyal, help people out. That's the legacy that I'm hoping I'm leaving with my 2 boys and my family.
That's awesome. I love that you're writing down your stories. I wish I had my grandfathers.
Yeah.
Both of them.
Yeah. My wife and I have talked that we don't know how our parents met. We don't know where they lived and all that type of stuff. So we're making it a point, and we even thought about, maybe that's a business that my son should do. He was in the videography of getting those stories for people, especially military people, because it's so close to my heart. But, learning about your parents and, how they got together. So we're leaving that for our kids too. We want them to know how I met Jill and she met me, and where we lived and what we did for jobs. And right now, like I said, I'm focusing on my military story from 1987 until I retired, and I'm writing that down so they have that forever.
Yeah, so it's interesting because I had one grandfather Army, one grandfather Navy, and I know very little.
Yeah,
my grandfather that was Army, Purple Heart survivor. I saw all his medals. Yeah, don't know what a single one of them meant because he wouldn't talk about it.
Yeah, and that reminds me of one story. My task force commander, when we were in Iraq, when we were writing the end of tour awards for these soldiers, he was adamant and demanding that we put in their awards exactly what that soldier did. You know, how many missions they went on, how many IEDs they encountered, every detail that we could. He goes, Mike, because these soldiers will go home and many of them won't tell their family what they did. So when their family member picks up that sheet of paper, they can read. And I actually had a family member approach me. He goes, I never knew what my son did in Iraq until I read his award. I was like, holy shit, we did it right.
Yeah. Yeah. Like literally, I know the only story I know of was from my grandma because my grandpa would never say it.
Yeah.
And, he was, fresh 18, 19-year-old, just going out there into the Korean War.
Yeah.
And he's down at training, and I don't even know what fort he was at. But he's from Illinois, and his platoon sergeant happened to be from the same hometown. And he knew where that unit was going.
Okay.
And he pulled him aside and actually gave him a different position. And I don't know, you may know, but at that point in that genre of our history, he was a triangulator. So he didn't end up going on the front lines. He was helping triangulate where the enemy fire was coming from and whatnot.
Could have saved his life.
It did save his life.
Yeah.
And that's why I'm here today.
Yeah.
That's the only story I know.
Isn't that something? Yeah. I know there's ways you can dig into that stuff, but that's just an incredible story right there. I mean, the little bit that you know, the reason that you are here is because of a decision that somebody made that affected where your grandfather went.
Yeah.
And there's millions of stories out there like that we just don't know about.
Yeah. And some will, have already died, right? Those stories have already died because the last person that knew it is in the ground.
Yeah.
And that's the beauty of the age that we live in. And the reason I've started this podcast, even when I had the financial firm, was my marketing guy who's the Air National Guard guy I told you about, was telling me all the marketing reasons that we start a podcast. And I say, yeah, those are all good. Here's the reason I'm going to do it. Because I got to have a purpose behind if I'm going to be passionate about doing something. Said, because we were in financial planning, so we dealt with death, with life insurance and stuff of that nature. And I was like, my kids will always have my voice if I do this.
Yeah. Exactly.
And we're in that age right now, if you have a thought to start a podcast, if you have the thought to get on YouTube, if you have the thought to write on your social media, do it.
Yeah.
Start a newsletter. Write down your reflections like you're doing with your military story, because we're 2 generations from being forgotten.
Yeah.
And that's how it's always been throughout the history of time. But not today.
Right.
The book I wrote, my kids will always have that. I'm recording it on audio now. So anything that ever happens to me, they'll have my voice.
Exactly.
That'll live into perpetuity. So my great-great-great-great-grandchildren may know my thoughts.
Yeah.
And we can do that today where our previous generations couldn't.
It's funny you mentioned the podcast. I've got a good friend in Indiana, and he and I are literally, we just bought our equipment and we're going to do a podcast. And it's just going to be we're going to talk a little bit about politics, sports, life, family, just whatever we think of. And he and I, we've talked about doing this for years, and we're going to start it. We're going to hopefully kick things off next month.
Well, a little advice, get at least, how often are you going to release? Weekly, monthly?
Right now, we'll probably go twice a month and then hopefully increase as, we get familiar and better at it.
So I've told everyone this that that has thought about starting a podcast or told me they're going to. I said, get at least 10 recorded so that you don't feel the pressure of getting guests on and stuff of that nature. So you have a little bit of a backlog as you go forward. So little advice, and anyone listening, hopefully they can get into that as well. But you don't need a fancy setup like I have to do it.
Yeah.
You can get it, just behind the camera. It's more about your words and the message that you're trying to get across, or the niche you're trying to be in, than it is about having a fancy setup. You can always upgrade.
Right.
So that's really good. So last question I always ask is, what's an unpopular belief that you hold that most others disagree on? Could be on anything we talked about or whatever comes to your gut.
I don't think we ever landed on the moon.
Me neither. I was literally just in an argument with this the other day. What's your thoughts on it? What are your questions?
I think it was all staged because we were in a race with the Soviets and because of Chappaquiddick, and whatever other reason. I'm sure there was some monetary reason that some politician had it. But I listened to an interesting podcast. Joe Rogan had a gentleman on. I think his last name's Gentile, I believe. I'd have to look that up. But they were talking about Stanley Kubrick and the lenses that were used in Eyes Wide Shut, and how did Kubrick have those when he filmed that? Well, the only people that had them at the time was NASA. And, the whole conspiracy theory of that being filmed at a stage out at
in New Mexico,
wherever. And so I talked to some people about that, and they're like, yeah, you're full of shit. But I truly believe we never landed on the moon.
All right. So here's for those of you that think Colonel Murphy and I are full of shit or don't want to believe us. So let me just pose some questions to you. All right. So the computer technology at that time was less than what you have in your microwave today.
Exactly.
LBJ called from a landline to the moon.
Was it LBJ or Nixon? Was it LBJ?
Was it?
I forget which one. It doesn't matter, but exactly. They called from a landline.
Alec, which one was it? LBJ or Nixon? Either way, our president called from a landline.
Right.
No satellite technology at that time. They showed the lunar lander landing on the moon.
Who was there?
Who was the cameraman?
No stars.
How did the camera? Yeah. Where are the stars in any of the footage?
Flag blowing.
How is the flag blowing when the science has proved that there's no atmospheric pressure up there for the flag to be blowing in the quote unquote wind?
All the original film was burnt up.
All the technology is lost and we can't get back there.
Yeah.
So the last moon, quote unquote, moon landing was 1972. Mm-hmm. So yeah. And so the people that say that we're full of shit are like, oh, you sound like the flat earthers. Well, I'm not here to say the Earth's flat or not. I know that there's arguments on both sides. What I am saying is the moon landing was horseshit.
Yeah, me too. Me too. I've learned over the years that a lot of the things, whether it's JFK's assassination or whatever, we were all fed bullshit.
Yeah.
And people, whether I'm right or wrong, hopefully what I'd like to instill in people is do some research.
Question.
Don't believe what CBS is telling you every day.
And it's okay to, so like, for instance, you probably at one point believed in the moon landing, right? Mm-hmm. So did I. You and I already discussed, we both believe that we should have gone to war for 9/11 because we believe the official narrative. Now we've both changed our mind based on new information. Yep. This is what people get so stuck in nowadays. They're not willing to change their mind because of their own ego with new information presented to them. Yep. They just root their feet in. And that's one of the key leadership traits that I want people to really focus on is stand firm in your beliefs, but also be willing to hold space for others because that's how you learn. And I want, we talked about DEI earlier, DEI. I want diversity in thought. Mm-hmm. And I want meritocracy. I want the best person for the job, and I want the people that think differently than me to help me see angles I don't see.
Yep. Not to go down another subject, but I really truly believe that's why Charlie Kirk was assassinated, because he was getting people to talk and to open their minds to other things, other possibilities. And whomever, whatever, what country or whatever said, we can't have that. Now Charlie's gone.
100%. And I don't believe that narrative we're getting right now either.
I don't either.
There's way too many questions. Anyone that shot a hunting rifle like that knows the damage that it does to a deer, let alone someone's neck. There's way too many questions there. Like, and I believe the narratives that they give us, the more and more I've gone down this path, are meant to confuse us.
Yeah.
Are meant to get us to argue.
The Nazis did the same thing back in World War II. You put a little bit of truth and all of this confusion in there. You use your media to get people divided and questioning. And we are no different than what they were doing back in World War II.
Yeah.
No different.
Well, shame we got to end, but we want to keep it on time. What is the best way or medium for people to follow you, reach out to you?
I'm on Facebook. I'm on Instagram, just under Mike Murphy 83 or whatever. But on our podcast, when it comes out, it's going to be called The Colonel and Mr. Big. And Mr. Big is my friend from Indiana. But we'll get it out there. We're going to use an app that gets it out, probably similar Buzzsprout.
You can ask, that we use that.
Yeah,
you can
probably lean on.
Yeah, ask Alec any questions you need. We've helped
I'm
others.
sure I'll have many, but that will be coming out soon, and then hopefully we get a following. We're just going to have fun with it, but anybody can look me up on Facebook, I guess, and DM me or whatever. And if they have any questions or whatever, I'd be more than happy to.
Yeah, and if one of your former soldiers that hasn't gotten back in touch with you happens to hear this,
please reach out.
Yeah.
We just had our second reunion this past weekend. Last year we had 23 guys show up. This year we only had 7. And I know people are busy, but I would really like to get that to grow every year. And, we use our Facebook page to get that message out. But, especially not the soldiers so much, I want them to come, the ones that stay in communication, but I really want those soldiers that have secluded themselves and are hiding somewhere, for lack of better words. I really want them to reach out and get a hold of us.
Well, if that's the mission, Spartan audience, you know what to do. Spread this far and wide so that they can get back in touch, but also for all the wisdom that Mike dropped on us today. So remember, the good and great are the enemies of possible. Lead like a Spartan today.
This is Sparta!